and welcome back to another video. I cannot believe that we are already at this point, but I am today filming my second trimester recap. As of last Tuesday, nearly a week ago now, I am officially in my third trimester, which is insane. This pregnancy has just flown by. I can't believe that it's a matter of another 11 or 12 weeks and there will be another baby here. Insane, but so exciting. Today, I basically just wanted to go through sort of section by section, week by week nearly, what the second trimester has looked like as far as symptoms, the appointments that we've had, as far as midwife appointments, ultrasounds, all that sort of stuff, so you sort of know what to expect. I really love watching these videos, but I find that so many of them are American, which is fine. There's still obviously a lot of similarities, but as far as knowing what the Australian healthcare system looks like and what sort of things are offered, there's not heaps of information out there in this sort of format. If you're new here, I'm nearly 29 weeks pregnant with my second baby. I have a nearly 1-year-old Eloise, nearly 1-year-old daughter. She's at daycare at the moment, so I'm hoping to get this done before I have to go and pick her up because it will be a lot easier to film with her out of the house. My husband is a nurse and I film a lot of budgeting content, family content, motherhood content, and I will be filming some student content soon as uni goes back in just over a month now. So if you're interested in any of that, I really encourage you to stick around and subscribe to this video. My goal this year is to hit 1,000 subscribers. We'll see if we can make that happen. And comment if you have any questions or if you just have anything to add to the conversation, because it really is just an ever-changing topic, all of this. So this is also Archie. He's been in some of my videos before, but this is our dog Archie. He's a bit of a rascal sometimes, but he is a cutie. So I think he's wanting to snuggle with me for today's video. So he'll be here for a bit and then he might disappear. Hello, yes. So my second trimester was from the 24th of September, from 12 weeks pregnant until the 13th of January. So until 27 weeks and 6 days. That's what I'm counting it as anyway. If you look it up online, some people count 27 weeks as the third trimester, some people count 28. I'm counting 28 just because it makes me feel like I've gone that little bit further, but count it whenever you want. It doesn't really matter. 24th of September. At that point, we were still a bit confused about what the due date was going to be. That's just because the pregnancies were so close, my eldest daughter and then this pregnancy, they were so close that there was some confusion about when I ovulated and therefore when the due date was. So the original due date that we had was the 3rd of April, but then at the dating scan, I was measuring back at 6 weeks, I was measuring a bit earlier than that. And so the due date was changed to the 13th of April because the baby was a little bit smaller then. And so that was fine. It was actually going to be pretty perfect because that would have been the day before our second wedding anniversary, which would have been very sweet. On the 25th of September last year, I had my 12-week midwife appointment. And that was really great. There wasn't too much that needed to be spoken about at that appointment, but we mostly just discussed the fact that my due date was still up in the air because there was so much disparity between my last menstrual period, but also the dating scan. So we were waiting on the 12-week nuchal translucency scan to make sure that we had a more definite due date. I had my 12-week scan on the 2nd of October. If you do live in Adelaide, I would recommend going to the repat for your ultrasounds because they're bulk billed. The typical ultrasounds that you'll have in a pregnancy, in a normal, everything's fine pregnancy, you'd have a dating scan when you first find out that you're pregnant, and you'd have that alongside a blood test to confirm the pregnancy. You'll then have a 12-week scan, which is the nuchal translucency scan. So that's to check for Down syndrome and things like that. But it's also just to check that the baby is progressing along, that there is still a heartbeat, because obviously that 12-week point is when a lot of people choose to tell their friends and family, and that's because they get confirmation that baby is growing and healthy, which is very nerve-wracking leading up to it, but it's lovely afterwards. And then you will also have a morphology scan at 20 weeks, which I will get to later. But all 3 of these scans are bulk billed at the repat. If you go to one of the other radiology clinics, they do usually charge you. There is a Medicare rebate, but I think it's still about a couple $100 per scan. That is just something to keep in mind. The only thing that I will say with that is with the repat, we didn't get any printed out photos. With Eloise, we didn't know about the repat as an option. And so we had gone to Benson Radiology and we got the ultrasound photos, like where they're all printed out. And that was really cute for photos, but at the end of the day, it didn't matter. At the repat, they do send you the photos online, but it's not printed out in that like traditional scan format. That is just something to keep in mind. But for a couple $100, I would rather just get the photos on my phone and then print them out at Kmart for 20 cents. And then if you do need to have any additional scans after that morphology scan, they'll be usually through your hospital anyway, and then they're bulk billed, so you don't need to worry about them. So far, the only thing that I've had to pay for this pregnancy was my first appointment with my GP, where after the Medicare rebate, I think it was $20, where I just got the referral for that first scan and for my blood test. So that's all been pretty good. Obviously you have the choice to go private as well, but this is all the public system. Anyway, so we had that 12-week scan on the 2nd of October and baby was measuring a lot bigger. So we've finally settled on a due date of the 8th of April 2025, which is very exciting. I was going back and forth on whether or not I was going to share the exact due date, but at the end of the day, baby's going to come when they're ready, or if we do have to have some sort of medical intervention, that's going to happen anyway. So I'm not too stressed about people's questions as far as when's the baby coming. I don't know. I know as well as you do, so we'll wait and see, and when they're here, they're here. I also got a call after my midwife appointment just to discuss with where my BMI was sitting at that point. I was like just over, which I'm not that stressed about. It definitely was a bit disheartening hearing it at first, but then just coming to terms with the fact that I was 4 months postpartum when I fell pregnant this time. And you know, it's been a crazy time. My weight was not the top of my priority list, but yes, my BMI was just slightly too high. That the risk for gestational diabetes was higher, and so they wanted me to do an early test. Normally you have a test for that at 28 weeks, which I did have, but they got me to do an early test as well at 16 weeks. So at 16 weeks, I had my first glucose test for this pregnancy. Yes, so on October 17th, I had that first glucose test and everything came back normal. Just a word on the glucose test. I always hear people saying how awful it is. It's definitely not fun, but it's not that bad. I don't know if that's just because I eat a lot of sugary food normally or have a lot of sugary drinks, but it was fine for me. So I don't know, it might not be great for you, but I just feel like TikTok was all very one-sided about it being the worst thing ever. And so I just wanted to put your mind at ease a bit if you haven't had your glucose test yet, that it might not be awful. For me, the worst part was that it's fasted, and so I had to go until about 10:30 a.m. without eating anything, which when you have low iron and you're pregnant in general is not the most ideal situation, but it's one day. I felt a little bit dizzy afterwards after having the blood test with no food, and then went home and had food and I was fine. Most important thing is there was no gestational diabetes at that test. On November 28th, I had my morphology scan. So I think I was just over 21 weeks at this point, but that's because the repat still had my, not even original due date, my second due date of the 13th of April. And so I had that scan then. It's important to know with the morphology scan that you will be there for at least an hour because it's a very in-depth scan. They look at everything with your baby to make sure that everything's developing properly with them, but they also look at everything with you as far as your uterus, your cervix, your placenta, your umbilical cord, all of those sorts of things. They make sure that that's all developing well and correctly placed and everything as well. So at that appointment, I found out that I had an anterior placenta, which made sense because I hadn't been feeling a lot of kicking at that point. Whereas with Eloise, I was definitely feeling kicks from about 18 weeks. I'd felt a couple kicks already at that point, but nowhere near as much, which I was surprised about because people had said with subsequent pregnancies you feel them a lot earlier, but when I found out I had the anterior placenta, that made more sense. We also got told at that point that baby was breech. They were bum down, legs around, head up, but that was at 20 weeks. That didn't really matter all that much, but otherwise everything was all fine in that scan. We didn't find any abnormalities or anything, and I was looking healthy, all that. The other thing is this is the scan where you can find out the gender if you're wanting to find out the gender. But we chose not to. We chose not to with Eloise as well, and that was just the absolute best moment for us. It's a moment that we look back on really, really fondly and can't wait to experience again, of the baby coming out and the midwife saying, "What have we got, Dad?" And Alex being able to say, "We have a daughter." And I just broke down crying of happy tears. However, I do think this one's a boy. I just have a feeling. I could be wrong, but I had a feeling with Ellie that she was a girl as well. And it was literally as I was about to push that I was like, oh, maybe it's a boy, because I think I just didn't want to have my hopes up that I was having a girl. This time I do think I'm having a boy. I'll probably change my mind again right when I'm in labor, but I do think it's a boy. We'll wait and see. Anyway, had that morphology scan on the 28th of November and everything was looking great. The next week, 4th of December, I had my next midwife appointment, and we got told at that appointment that the baby was measuring quite large, that they were measuring, I think at that point they said above the 97th percentile, but that was with the wrong due date. So that was with them thinking that baby was coming later. Once they adjusted to the correct due date, they were still sitting at the 97th percentile on average. So obviously ultrasounds aren't always 100% accurate, but it does usually give a good indication. So that's what we found out at that point. Because of the baby measuring bigger, they wanted me to have 2 extra scans. So I did have one scan at 28 weeks, which I'll talk about in a second. And I'm gonna have another one at either 34 or 36 weeks. I can't quite remember, just to monitor how big baby's getting, monitor the strain that it's putting on my internal situation, so that we can make an educated decision as far as induction, C-section, etc. At this point, there's not really been any mention from the midwives about an induction or a C-section. That's more just from my own research as far as what the normal procedure is in these situations. So I think they're trying not to worry me yet, but I think that will be something at the next appointment that we end up talking about. And so finally, last week was the last week of appointments that I've had. So on the 14th of January, I had my second glucose test. Again, everything came back fine with that, and I was fine during it. On the 15th, I had my midwife appointment for my 28-week checkup with my midwife. I brought a few things to her as far as some pelvic pain that I've been having, which I'll chat about in a second. That was all good. I hadn't had my ultrasound yet at that point, so I will be getting a call this week from the midwife once they review my scan. But then I had my 28-week ultrasound at my hospital on Friday the 17th of January. And basically we did find out at that ultrasound that baby is still breech. It's not too much of a concern at the moment. There's about 8 weeks until they need to be turned around before the doctors and midwives start getting a bit concerned. And even then there's still procedures and things that they can try and do. So I'm trying not to stress too much at this point. But we did also find out that I was 28 plus 3 at this scan. So technically this should be in the 3rd trimester video, but I'm going to include it all in here. I was 28 plus 3, but baby was measuring 31 plus 5. Again, obviously it's an estimate, but it is looking like we've got a bit of a bigger baby going on, and that's all right. It just is pointing likely, from my understanding, the midwife hasn't said anything yet, but it's pointing likely towards an early induction, which I'm all right with, but it does throw a bit of a spanner in the works as far as me hoping to maybe go unmedicated. I do think if I'm induced, I will probably get an epidural, just because I've heard that the contractions can be a lot worse. Obviously, I'll evaluate it in the moment, but I'm just not putting pressure on myself to have the perfect birth, or whatever that even means, as long as I get through it safely, baby's safe, and hopefully the recovery is all good. I'll be happy with that. I got an epidural last time as well, and my recovery was wonderful. I was up walking to the shops and stuff like 4 days postpartum, so I'm not complaining at all about that. So those were all the appointments that we had in the 2nd trimester. It's definitely, I find, the more appointment heavy trimester. The 1st trimester is so frustrating because all you want to do is see your baby and know what's going on and know what the next plan is, but there's not really anything that can be done in those first 12 weeks. You have a couple ultrasounds and like 1 appointment, and that's it. But 2nd trimester we had quite a few. 3rd trimester you normally don't have any ultrasounds, so I'm lucky that I have got a couple. With Ellie as well, we actually got 3 extra ultrasounds in the 3rd trimester because I had marginal cord insertions, so they were worried about her being too small. Yes, I've definitely been quite lucky that I've gotten to see my babies throughout the pregnancy still, but you definitely do have more midwife appointments in the 3rd trimester than you do in any other trimester, as they start getting a lot closer in the lead up to baby arriving. Now, as far as symptoms this pregnancy, with Ellie, I don't feel as though I had too many symptoms. I definitely was more emotional, and that's just due to the hormones. That's bound to happen. But as far as hip and pelvic pain and everything, I didn't feel like I had that much. This pregnancy has been a whole different story. Since about 20 weeks, I've had a lot of pelvic pain, a lot of hip pain. And so in the last 2 months, I've started going to the chiropractor for the first time ever. It has made a world of difference for me. I know there's lots of different opinions on the chiropractor. I don't know if it's a placebo or what, but whatever it is, it's been working for me. So I'm going to keep going. That has really been helping. But otherwise, just the heat that we've been having in Adelaide at the moment has been a killer. We only have an aircon in the living room, and that's why we bought this sofa bed in the last couple of weeks so that Alex and I can sleep out here in the summer. Ellie's room luckily stays really, really cool, and she's got a fan in there. But our bedroom doesn't have any cooling. Yeah, it's nice just to have the option to sleep out here, because if you know, you know, once that belly starts popping, sleep is so difficult. But that's actually another thing. With Ellie, my sleep wasn't that terrible. This time, the sleep has been awful. So I don't know if it's the belly. I don't know if it's the heat. I don't know if it's the extra weight from baby. Who knows? It has not been nice. The other thing, yeah, has just been emotions, very heightened, hormones, all of that sort of stuff. I've just been really on edge. So I'm very excited to have this baby out. It's been such a different pregnancy to Ellie. With Ellie, I had such awful morning sickness, and after that, I thought I would trade this for anything. This pregnancy, the first trimester was still really difficult. I had a lot of other sicknesses. If you're interested in hearing more about that, I did speak about it in my pregnancy announcement video. Yeah, this pregnancy, just the general day-to-day aches and pains have been so much worse. And it's definitely harder when you've got a crawling baby that you have to chase after. She's not quite walking yet, but she's nearly there. So that's going to happen any day. And that's going to make things a bit more rough again. It's really what they say about every baby is different. Every pregnancy is different. As much as you learn from each pregnancy, you never know what to expect with the next one. I just cannot believe that in a matter of 12 weeks, maybe 10 even, I am going to be sitting here with another baby, filling you guys in on how the birth went and how everything is going. I would love if you would stick around and subscribe. I've also got a few more nesting vlogs coming up over the next few weeks. So if you're interested in this baby related content, I would love for you to stick around. But as I said, there's also a lot of budgeting content, meal prep content, motherhood, and uni content coming up. So I would love for you to stick around, and I will see you in next week's video. Bye guys.